Hello, everybody. I was going to do this off of StreamYard, but seeing as that my internet is acting up very, very badly, so I'm just going to do this record and I'm going to upload this video so that my audio isn't lagging or anything. So this is for Carol from Facebook. She had wanted me to do this study on the book of Enoch. She says she has the book, but she doesn't understand it. So, Carol, if you're going to be watching this, there is many Bible verses that I can reference, but I don't have everything written down. So when I post this to not Facebook, but YouTube, then I will post it to Facebook, and in Facebook I will let you know that it's done, it's uploaded, and all the good such things. And before I upload it, I'm going to find all these verses that I want people to look at dealing with God's creation and God's laws. Not the laws of Newton, not the laws of Pythagoras. These are God's laws, okay? Who created the earth. So, we have this here. We're going to start off here in chapter 2, or book, chapter 2 here, with God's laws, okay? So it says here, let me get this to where I could talk and you guys can hear me. Contemplate all the events in the skies, how the lights in the sky do not change their courses, and how each rises and sets in order, each at its proper time, and they do not transgress their law. That means they're not going to go in any other order but what God said to go in. Consider the earth and understand from the work that is done upon it, from the beginning to the end. Now listen to this, from the beginning to the end. He says, consider the earth and understand from the work that is done upon it, from the beginning to the end, from Genesis all the way to Revelation 22, that no work of God changes as it becomes manifest. Consider the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is full of water, and the clouds and dew and rain rest upon it. Contemplate and see how all the trees appear withered, and all their leaves are stripped, with exception of the 14 trees which are not stripped, which remain with the old leaves until the new come after 2 or 3 years. And again, contemplate the days of summer, how at its beginning the sun is above it. You seek shelter and shade because of the heat of the sun, and the earth burns with scorching heat, and you cannot tread upon the earth or upon a rock because of its heat. And it says here, contemplate how the trees are covered with green leaves and bear fruit. All this stuff he's talking about in Genesis chapter 1. And understand in respect of everything and perceive how he who lives forever, God, made all these things for you. And how his works are before him in each succeeding year, and all his works serve him and do not change. But as God has decreed, so everything is done. And consider how the seas and rivers together complete their task. But you have not preserved nor observed the law of the Lord, right? This is dealing with his creation. But you have transgressed and have spoken proud and hard words with your unclean mouth against his majesty. You hard of heart, you will not have peace. And because of this, you will curse your days, and the years of your life you will destroy, and the eternal curse will increase, and you will not receive mercy. In those days you will transform your name into an eternal curse to all the righteous, and they will curse you sinners forever. For the chosen there will be light, joy, and peace, and they will inherit the earth. But for you, the impious, there will be a curse. When wisdom is given, right? When wisdom is given to the chosen, they will all live, and will not again do wrong, neither through forgetfulness or through pride. But those who possess wisdom will be humble. They will not again do wrong, and they will not be judged in all the days of their life, and they will not die of wrath or anger, but they will complete the number of the days of their life, and their life will grow in peace, and the years of their joy will increase and gladness and eternal peace all the days of their life. Now, let's get into this here. I would do this whole study here, but this is also for the people that are on my channel, that believe that the earth is flat. So let's get into the revolution of lights real quick, because this deals with the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? It deals with the sun, moon, and stars. So it says, let me go into the chapter. That was just an introduction. So it says here, the book of the revolution of the lights of heaven. Lights, not planets, lights. But again, Christians will say, oh, this is not canonized because you never read Genesis chapter 1, and you won't go to Genesis chapter 1. You won't read Job. You won't read Psalms 150, Psalms 96:10, Psalms 94:5, and all the other ones that in the Bible says about God's creation of the earth. You won't read that because you don't believe the earth is flat. So of course you won't read that. But you say you believe but people say they believe every word written. No, they don't. They only believe the happy gospel when everything ain't happy in the book. Anyway, and this is not to you, Carol. This is toward certain people that are going to come on my channel and say things later on when this is uploaded. Okay, so it says the book of the revolution of the lights of heaven. Each as it is, according to their classes, according to their period of rule and their times, according to their names and places of origin, according to their months, that Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, is their leader, showed to me, and he showed me all their regulations exactly as they are for each year of the world forever, until the new creation shall be made, which will last forever. And this is the first law of the lights, the light called the sun. Go to Genesis chapter 1. Its rising is in the gates of heaven that are towards the east. We know the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, right? Because it says it right here. And it's setting in the western gate of heaven. I saw 6 gates from which the sun rises, and 6 gates in which the sun sets, and the moon also rises and sets in those gates. And the leader of the stars, together with those whom they lead, there are 6 in the east and 6 in the west. So we understand God created the earth. So he made all this stuff. If you're going to bash this, you're bashing God's words, period. All exactly in place, one next to the other. And there are many windows to the south and the north of those gates. And first there rises the greater light, right? Genesis chapter 1, 14 to 18, or 14 to 19. And the first rises the greater light, named the sun, and its disk, when I tell people it's a disk, because God's word says it's a disk, is like the disk of heaven, and the whole of it is full of fire, which gives light and warmth. The wind blows the chariot on which it ascends, and the sun goes down in the sky and returns through the north in order to reach the east. It's kind of doing a circle, right? If the west is over here, and the north is up here, and the east is over here, and the south is down here, he basically says it rises in the east over here, goes down south to make it all the way to the west, and then goes back up north to the east, right? Kind of like east, rise, go up, then rise, go up, then rise, go up, and then rise, come down, right? Oh, like that, right? Probably like in a circle too. Who knows? We don't know the creation of God. Only way we're going to know is if we read his words, period. The wind blows the chariot on which it ascends, and the sun goes down in the sky and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is led so that it comes to the appropriate gate, and it shines in the sky. In this way it rises in the first month in the large gate, namely it rises through the fourth of those 6 gates that are towards the east. And in the 4th gate through which the sun rises in the first month, there are 12 window openings, from which, whenever they are open, flames come out. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes out through the 4th gate for 30 days. So it's supposed to be 30 days in every month, not 31, every month is 30 days. And exactly in the 4th gate, in the west of heaven, it goes down. And it says here, and in those days, the day grows daily longer, kind of like daylight savings, right? Or actually, this is springtime. This is, from the beginning, is springtime, right? So this is springtime right here. And in those days, the day grows daily longer, and the night grows nightly shorter until the 13th morning. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night by a double part, daylight savings, right? And the day amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the night amounts to 8 parts. And the sun rises from the 4th gate and sets in the 4th gate and returns to the 5th gate in the east for 30 mornings. And it rises from and sets in the 5th gate. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. And the sun returns to the east and comes to the 6th gate and rises in the 6th rises and sets in the 6th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign, right? Genesis says that the sun and the moon were created for signs, seasons, days, and years, right? That's God's creation, not man, God. They didn't put that sun up there, nor did they put the moon or the stars. But everyone runs to those guys to get what God created. Why not go to the one who created it? And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night and amounts to 12 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 6 parts. And the sun rises up so that the day may grow shorter and the night longer, and the sun returns to the east and comes into the 6th gate and rises from it and sets for 30 mornings. When the 30 mornings have been completed, the day becomes shorter by exactly 1 part, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night to 7 parts. The sun goes out from the west through the gates, through that 6th gate, and goes to the east and rises in the 5th gate for 30 mornings, and it sets in the west again in the 5th gate in the west. And it says here, on that day, the day becomes shorter by 2 parts. Now this is going into the fall season. And the day amounts to 10 parts and the night to 8 parts. And the sun rises in the 5th gate and sets in the 5th gate in the west and rises in the 4th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign, and sets in the west. On that day, the day becomes equal with the night and is of equal length. And the night amounts to 9 parts and the day to 9 parts. So we understand that there are 18 parts, right, in what God created. And the sun rises from the gate and sets in the west and returns to the east and rises in the 3rd gate for 30 mornings and sets in the west in the 3rd gate. The sun rises from that 3rd gate and sets in the 3rd gate in the west and returns to the east. And the sun rises in the 2nd gate in the east for 30 mornings, and likewise it sets in the 2nd gate of the west of heaven. And on that day, the night amounts to 11 parts and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on that day and from the second gate and sets in the west in the second gate and returns to the east to the first gate for 31 mornings and sets in the west in the first gate. So we understand when it's changing seasons, that's when the 31 morning thing happened. On that day, the night becomes longer and becomes double the day, and the night amounts to exactly 11 parts, and the day to 6 parts. And with this, the sun has completed the divisions of his journey, and it turns back again along these divisions of his journey, and it comes through that first gate for 30 mornings and sets in the west opposite it. And on that day, the night becomes shorter by length by 1 part and amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. The sun returns and comes into the second gate in the east, and it turns along those divisions of its journeys for 30 mornings, rising and setting. On that day, the night becomes shorter in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. On that day, the sun rises from the second gate and sets in the west, and returns to the east and rises in the third gate for 31 mornings and sets in the west of the sky. On that day, the night becomes shorter and amounts to 9 parts, and the day amounts to 9 parts, and the night becomes equal with the day, and the year amounts exactly 364 days. But let man tell us it's 365 in a quarter. But again, so when you do the math, it's going to tell you all these, all this stuff. So it says, and the length of the day and the night, and the shortness of the day and the night, they are different because of the journey of the sun. Because of its journey, its journey becomes daily longer and nightly shorter. And this is the law in the journey of the sun and its return, as often as it returns, 6 times it returns and rises. That is the great eternal light, which is forever and ever, is named the sun. And this that rises is the great light, which is named after its appearance, and as the Lord commanded. And thus it rises and sets. It neither decreases nor rests, but runs day and night in its chariot. So it says the sun is moving day and night. Doesn't say the earth is moving, but again, people love science more than God's words. And its light is 7 times brighter than that of the moon, but in size, the two are equal. So science tells us that the sun is bigger than the earth and of the moon, but the moon and the sun are equal. And then it gets into the moon here. It says here, after this law, I saw another law for the lesser light, named the moon. And its disk, they're both disks, Let me just show you what a disc look like for those that don't know shapes. Actually, I would have to show you after I upload this video because I forgot I'm not on StreamYard. So I'm going to do a short video showing a disc. Right? Since people say, a disc is a circle, and look, a disc is flat. But again, you just can't comprehend that stuff when you're in your flesh and you don't read your Bible and you want to bash everything that you find true. But again, that's just for those that's going to come and bash what I got to say about this book here. Okay, so it says, I saw after this I saw another law for the lesser light, named the moon, and its disk is like the disk of the sun, and the wind blows its chariot on which it rides, and in fixed measure light is given to it. Every month its rising and setting change, and its days are as the days of the sun, and when its light is uniformly full, It is a seventh part of light of the sun, and thus it rises, and its first phase is toward the east, rises in the 13th morning, on the 13th morning, and on that day it appears, and it becomes for you the first phase for the moon on the 13th morning, together with the sun in the gate toward which the sun rises. So in the fourth gate, the sun and the moon are out in the daytime again. And a half with 11 part is, and its entire disk is empty, without light, except for a seventh part, a 14th part of its light. And on that day it receives a seventh part and a half of its light. Its light amounts to a seventh and a seventh part and a half. It sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with it and receives a half part of light. And on that night, at the beginning of its morning, at the beginning of the moon's day or Monday, the moon sets. Yeah, that's where they get the Monday from, right? The moon sets with the sun and is dark on the night in the sixth and seventh parts and a half. And it rises on that day with exactly a seventh part, goes out, recedes from the rising of the sun, and becomes bright in the remainder of its days in the other six and seventh parts. And another journey and law I saw for it, in that according to this law it makes its monthly journey. And Uriel, the holy angel, who is the leader of them all, showed me everything, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they are, and the appearance of their light, until 15 days have been completed. Okay, and it says here, in seventh parts it makes all its darkness full, and in seven parts it makes all its light full, in the east and in the west. And in certain months it changes its settings, and in certain months it follows its own individual course. In 2 months it sets with the sun in those two gates that are in the middle, in the third and the fourth gate. It goes out for 7 days and turns back, and it returns again to the gate from which the sun rises. And in that gate it makes all its light full, and recedes from the sun, and comes in 8 days to the sixth gate from which the sun rises. So when the sun rises from the fourth gate, the moon goes out for 7 days until it rises from the fifth gate, and again it returns in 7 days to the fourth gate and makes its light full, recedes, and comes to the first gate in 8 days. And again it turns in 7 days to the fourth gate from which the sun rises. Thus I saw their positions, how the moon rose and the sun set in those days. And if 5 years were added together, the sun has an excess of 30 days. For each year of the 5 years, there are 364 days. Yeah, and 3 years, it says, and if 5 years were added together, the sun has an excess of 30 days. For each year of the 5 years, I'm just reading this so you guys can get this clearly. Out of each year of the 5 years, that means for 1 year, there are 364 days. And the sun and the excess of the sun and the stars comes to 6 days. In 5 years, with 6 days each, they have an excess of 30 days. And the moon falls behind the sun and the stars by 13 days. And the moon conducts the years exactly, all of them according to their eternal positions. They are neither early nor late, even by 1 day, but change the year in exactly 364 days. Now it says there in 3 years, let me bring up my calendar for you guys. Let's do a little math while we're looking at this as well. So calculator. Okay, let's just put this to the side for right now. So as you see here, it says in 3 years, there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years, 1,820 days, so that in 8 years, there are 2,912 days. Okay, remember, they didn't have calculators back then. They had to rely on God's words 100% purely. Now, let's go here. Right? Well, let's do this. 364 times 3. And that equals, boom, right here, 1,092 days. And again, there you have it. 364 times 3 years, 1,092. Now let's do this one, right? Right. So in 5 years, there are 1,820 days in 5 years. So this is the math, right? How you could prove what's written. So let's just take this here. Let's do this. 364 times 5. And that equals 1,820 days, as this says right here. So this is how we check if everything's right. So that in 8 years, there are 2,912 days. Let's do the math again. Okay. So this is very, very fascinating. We understand the truth when God's words speak, right? 364 times 8, and that amounts to 2,912 days according to God's word. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm getting all sick. But anyway, for the moon alone, this is dealing with the moon. The days of 3 years come to 1,062 days, and in 5 years, it is behind 50 days. So, where is that? 3 years, in 3 years, is behind 50 days. Right, so this is 30-day separation that it's talking about, that the sun and the moon, right? When it says up there that the sun and the moon are behind by 30 days after they go through their courses, you see the 30-day separations here, right? Then you see these separations. 5 years. 5 years is behind 50 days. 820, right? 1820. So 1820 minus 50, that's 1,770 days, right? And then it says, and there is also, see, in the 5 years, and there are 1,770 days in 5 years, so that for the moon, the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days, right? It says for the difference in 8 years is 80 days, right? So again, 8 years here and 8 years up here, exactly 80 days away, right? So it says for the difference of the 8 years is 80 days, and all days that the moon is behind is 8 years, and 8 years are 80 days. So it tells you all you got to do is subtract 2,912. Let's do that, right? 2,912. 2,912 minus 80 days equals, again, 2,832 days, as you see right here. So there's the math right there being done. All right. So for the difference, all right, I read that. And the year is complete exactly in accordance with their positions, and the positions of the sun, in that they rise from the gates from which the sun rises and sets for 30 days. And the leaders of the 10,000s who are in charge of the whole creation and in charge of all the stars, and also 4 days which are added, and are not separated from their position according to the whole reckoning of the year. And these serve on the 4 days that are not counted, excuse me, in the reckoning of the year. And because of them, men go wrong in them. Men go wrong in them. For these lights really serve in the stations of the world, one in the first gate, and one in the third gate, and one in the fourth gate, and one in the sixth gate. And the exact harmony of the world is complete in the separate 364 stations of the world. For the signs and the times and the years and the days were shown to me by the angel Uriel, whom the Lord of eternal glory has placed in charge of all the lights of heaven, in the heaven and in the world, so that they might rule on the face of heaven and appear over the earth, not around, going around. It says appear over the earth, and be leaders of day and night, the sun and the moon, the stars, and all the serving creatures who revolve in all the chariots of heaven. So it says they all revolve. It doesn't say the earth is revolving, it says they revolve. But again, likewise, Uriel showed me 12 gate openings in the disk of the chariot of the sun in the sky, from which the rays of the sun come out, and from them heat comes out over the earth when they are open at the times they are appointed for them. There are openings for the winds and for the spirit of dew, when they are open at their times, open in heaven at the ends of the earth. I saw 12 gates in heaven and the ends of the earth, for which the sun and the moon and the stars and all the works of heaven go out in the east and in the west. There are many window openings to the north and to the south, and each window at its appointed time sends out heat corresponding to those gates, from which the stars go out in accordance with his command to them, and in which they set according to their number. And I saw chariots in heaven running through the region above those gates, in which the stars that never set rotate. So it says the stars are rotating. One is bigger than the others. One is bigger than all the others, and it goes around the whole world. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 gate openings to all the winds, from which the winds come out and blow over the earth. 3 of them open in the front of heaven, 3 in the back, 3 in the right of heaven, and 3 on the left. And the 3 first are those toward the east, and when the 3 towards the north, and the 3 after those toward the south, and the 3 toward the west. Through 4 of them come wind of blessing and peace, and from the other 8 come winds of punishment. When they are sent, they bring devastation to the whole earth, and to the water which is on it, and to all those that dwell upon the earth, and to everything that is in the water and on the dry ground. And the first wind from those gates, called the east wind, comes out through the first gate, which is toward the east, to the one that comes from the south brings devastation, drought, heat, and destruction. And through the second gate in the middle comes what is right, and from it comes rain, fruitfulness, prosperity, and dew. And through the third gate, which is toward the north, comes cold and drought. After these, the winds toward the south come out through 3 gates. First Through the first of the gates, which inclines toward the east, comes a hot wind, and through the middle gate, which is next to it, comes pleasant fragrances, dew and rain and prosperity and life. And through the third gate, which is toward the west, come dew, rain, and locust and devastation. After these, the winds toward the north, from the seventh gate, which is toward the east, come dew, rain, locust, and devastation. And through the gate exactly in the middle come rain, dew, and life and prosperity. And through the third gate, which is toward the west, comes mist and hoarfrost, and snow and rain and dew and locust. And after these, the winds toward the west, through the first gate, which inclines toward the north, come dew, rain, hoarfrost, cold, snow, and frost. From the middle gate come dew, rain, prosperity, and blessing. And through the last gate, which is toward the south, come drought and devastation, burning and destruction. And thus the 12 gates of the 4 quarters of heaven are complete. And all their laws and all their punishments and all their benefits have I shown to you, my son Methuselah. They are called the first quarter eastern. They called the first quarter eastern because it is the first. They call the second south because there the Most High descends, and there especially the one who is blessed forever descends. The western quarter is called waning because there all the lights of heaven wane and go down. And the fourth quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts. The first of them is the dwelling place for men, and the second contains sea of water, and the deeps, and the forests, and rivers, and darkness, and mist. And the third part contains the garden of righteousness. And I saw 7 high mountains, which were higher than all the other mountains on the earth, and from them snow comes, and days and times and years pass away and go by. So then it gets into all this stuff. It's talking about now the names of the sun. So I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to come back and continue from 77 chapter 77 verse 4. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to end this so that I can upload it in a timely fashion, and it's not too long and it don't take too long. So for Karen and anybody that believes in the flat earth, here you go. And I'm going to continue from chapter 77 verse 4 tomorrow. Shalom.